What's going on? All thanks for tuning in once again. Let's recap the Wilder versus Herndon fight. A lot of people are saying that Wilder's washed and he shouldn't be fighting, and he doesn't have the power in the right hand. I saw a different fight. I saw a guy that was using the jab a lot more. Wilder in the past, especially the last couple of fights, especially that Shang fight, I hardly saw him throwing the jab at all. So Wilder wasn't really trying to get Herndon out early. He was having a tune-up fight. This is what this is, a tune-up fight. He was trying to make sure that, he was still confident to use the jab to come forward. We've seen him very hesitant. We've seen him very reliant on one punch. In this fight, he's using the jab a lot. He's using the hook. And it's a one-way, it's one-way traffic. I know that Herndon isn't a great fighter, but, it was one-way traffic. Herndon was on the back foot trying to stay away from Wilder. So it's not like Wilder could, really get a clean shot anyway. He did cut off the ring a couple of times. He did have Herndon on the ropes a couple of times, Most people were expecting Wilder to knock him out with one punch, a devastating knockout, and I think that's what really is the difference here, that Wilder didn't get that devastating knockout. He did win by stoppage. The referee did stop the fight. But again, Wilder's not going to fully commit to a punch and then, that's the fight. He was basically, in my opinion, wasn't really throwing the right hand at full capacity. He was just getting in rounds and coming forward, using the jab, using the hook, using a variety of different punches. So, overall, I don't think that Wilder should retire and he's washed up. I didn't really see any signs of him being tired. If anything, Herndon was really tired. Wilder was controlling the fight from round 1 to the stoppage, round 1 to round 7. So I think it was a good tune-up for him. I think that he used the lead hand a lot more, like I mentioned, which is a good thing. He needs to not abandon that jab, so I think he done well in this fight. I agree that, it did take longer than expected, but again, I think Wilder just wanted to get in rounds, I really do. I don't think that he was trying to take him out with one punch, because you see him coming forward with the jab a lot, landing wide hooks, landing the uppercut in the corner. He's throwing different punches. It wasn't like Wilder versus Ortiz 2, where he's just looking for one punch. He was actually throwing, coming forward. This wasn't Wilder versus Zhang. Wilder's backing up, not using the jab. This was Wilder coming forward for once. He hasn't come forward in his last 3 fights. Even the Hellenius fight, he wasn't coming forward. He was on the back foot. So it was good to see him come forward. It was good to see him use the lead hand. The knockout, I think the referee did stop it early, but it was one-way traffic. Herndon wasn't really throwing as well, which is a reason for referee to waive off a fight. He wasn't really throwing back, was he? But I still think that the stoppage was a bad stoppage. The referee could have let Wilder knock him out. But, clearly Wilder would have won the fight regardless. Wilder didn't look like he was in trouble anyway. There wasn't a point in the fight where I thought Wilder's in trouble or he might get knocked out. Herndon was very defensive. He was very back-footed. He wasn't pushing Wilder back. He was getting pushed back himself. So I mean, I would like to see another tune-up fight for Wilder. You know, this one was more of using all the tools. You know, the jab, the hook, uppercut. I think in his next fight we will see that devastating knockout. You know, Wilder's just trying to sharpen up, you know, his jab and things like that coming forward. So coming off a loss like he did against Shang, you know, I don't think this was really to say he's washed up. Again, I just think that the public was upset that he didn't get a devastating knockout, but in my opinion, he did well, you know, with coming forward with the lead hand, with the jab and things like that. You know, I believe he chopped him with the hook as well, left hook. So overall, I don't think it was a bad performance from Wilder. I think that he done well in this fight. You know, he got the win, most importantly, and you know, it's another knockout to his resume. You know, he's had 43 wins, 42 knockouts. You know, so I mean, it's nothing new for him, you know, to get a stoppage. I just think that people are a bit too harsh on him in terms of seeing a devastating knockout. But that's my opinion anyway. You know, I've said that in previous videos that Wilder's still has, you know, a lot of mileage left. I don't think that he's washed at all. I think, you know, he still has a good 2 years in him. You know, he did start late. So, I mean, he's in great condition as well. You know, he's always showing up in good condition. In terms of, you know, he's in good shape. So, I mean, this was a good start to the return for him, in my opinion. I wanted to see one of those devastating knockouts as well, but, you know, I was also happy to see him use the lead hand, you know, because he's going to need that against higher opposition for sure. You know, you can't afford to let a guy like Shang just come forward and, you know, not use that jab. You know, he just can't. He's got to use that jab. That's the go-to punch to set up the right hand. So overall, good performance from Wilder. I'm expecting him to have another fight before he fights guys on the top, but I wouldn't mind if he fought Joshua next. You know, Joshua and Wilder, they're basically off the top now. Both of them have lost. Wilder's come off with the win now, so I mean, Joshua versus Wilder makes sense now, you know, in my opinion. Fury's out of the picture, so why not make it while it's still there? You know, both guys don't have any obligations. I still want to see the fight. You know, I still want to see the fight. I know it's not the same, but, you know, hey, it's still two big names in one big fight. So leave your take on it. What did you think of Wilder's performance? I thought it wasn't too bad. You know, I'm not like gonna say that he's lost it or he's washed up. If anything, he's, you know, using the lead hand, which we haven't seen, like I mentioned, in the last 3 fights. And he basically won every round, you know, which is not like Wilder. You know, normally he's a guy that doesn't really go for it in the rounds. In this fight, he was a lot busier than usual. Leave your take anyway. Look forward to the comments, and I'll catch you next time. Peace.